Okay, B'ezrat Hashem. B'Shem Hashem Naseh v'Nasliach. Exactly. We're holding in Pirkei Avot, Pirkei, Mishnah Tetvav. This is a very interesting Mishnah. We're going to see there are 4 different character traits, or 4 different types of people who sit in front of the Chachamim. 4 different types of students. Mm-hmm. You know, in college, in high school, college, there's an art of taking notes. You know that there's a trick how to take notes, because the teacher's talking. What's that?
The girls.
The girls? What do you mean the girls?
When they're in college, they took good notes.
Oh, the girls took good notes.
Because they are multitasking.
But it's like, what's this? Is you can't write down every word the professor's saying. So what you need to do is write down as much, as short as possible to mean as much information as possible. Which means you can have information coming in and it's being absorbed or retained, but you could also have information coming in and it's not necessarily being retained. The Mishnah here tells us, and we'll see Rabbeinu Yonah as he explains it, that there are 4 types of students in front of their teachers in terms of the absorption of information, the retention, keeping that information. Mm-hmm. Let's see it inside. The Mishnah is very vague, so we'll have to see Rabbeinu Yonah how he clarifies this Mishnah. He says like this, Tetvav, Arba midot bayoshvim lifnei hachachamim. There are 4 characters, or 4 types of people, of students who sit in front of the Chachamim. You have one type of person, character is called sifog. Sifog is a sponge. Sponge. Now, is a sponge a good thing or not a good thing?
Very good thing.
You think it's a good thing? What do you think?
It's good because they compare the kids as sponges.
So it's a sponge, it's absorbative, it absorbs everything. Okay, we understand. We'll see if it's good or bad, we'll see in a moment. The second is umashpech. What's a mashpech? Mashpech is lashon lishfoch. Mashpech is a funnel. A funnel. You know what a funnel is? You have a cup, you want to pour from one to another, but the one of them has a large spout. So you put a tube, basically it's a tube, you pour it into the tube and it goes into the lower vessel. Mashpech is a funnel. Now, does that sound like a good character type or not a good character type? We're talking about an absorption of information. Is a funnel considered a good thing or not? We have to figure this out. The third is mishameret. Mishameret is lashon from shimurim. When you want to pour wine, so wine naturally has some sediment in it. It has some psolet in it. It has some negativity. Pieces of grapes or little pebbles or something. So you pour it inside of a sifter, or a sifter. Some people, I just looked this up online, very interesting. Some people use a coffee filter and to pour wine through so that the wine that comes out at the back is clean.
Filter,
yeah. So mishameret is a wine filter. Now, does that sound like a good thing, not a good thing? We have to figure that out. I mean, it's definitely something we use, it's good. But the question is, in terms of the personality of absorbing Torah...
It's filter, he takes with the important things.
He takes the bottom things? So let's see. And finally, the nafa. The fourth is nafa. Nafa is a sieve. A sieve is a filter used for flour. Meaning when you have flour, there's some larger pieces and smaller pieces. So you pour it
Like also sand, no?
like sand, exactly. You pour it through some sort of a filter. The larger pieces remain on top and the finer, thin pieces go to the bottom. Now those last 2 sound very similar. We're going to have to focus in. What's the difference between a wine sifter personality and the flour sieve personality? We'll have to go through that. So the Mishnah continues, and it illustrates sifog. What is the character of a person who's like sifog, like the sponge? Sho sofeg et hakol. He absorbs everything. And that sounds good. Good, he absorbs everything. But we'll see it's not so simple. Mashpech, what is the character of this funnel? Shemachnis bazo, that it enters in one end, umotzi bazo, and it leaves in the other end. Now, does that sound like a good thing or not a good thing? Why do you say not a good thing?
Coming here, going out.
He doesn't retain the information. What comes in, comes out, exactly. Okay, so you're right. We'll see. Mishameret is the wine sifter. Shemotzi'a et hayayin. What happens is with the sifter, the wine comes out of it. V'koletet et hashmarim. And what does it gather? The non-important parts. it gathers the sediment, meaning the pieces of grape, the little pebbles. It gathers the sediment in the top, allowing the wine to go through. Now we'll have to see, is this a good thing or a bad thing? You're saying it's no good. Why is it no good?
Because it's holding the garbage.
Because he keeps the garbage. Very good. And fourth one is vinafa. This is the flour sifter. Shemotzi'a et hakemach. It brings out, it allows to pass through the sifted, the finer flour, the thinner flour, v'koletet et hasolet, and it retains the thicker flour. Now we're going to see from the Rabbeinu Yonah, the Rambam learns his way too, is that in this case, you actually want the thicker flour. Very interesting. I wouldn't have assumed this naturally. When I looked it up online also, people who sift probably prefer the thinner one, but the way that we're going to see is the thicker one is better, so what it retains on top is actually the better item that they want, and therefore that's going to be meshubach min hakol. This is going to be the best character trait. We'll get to that soon.
It gives them important things.
Beautiful. So let's see Rabbeinu Yonah, how he explains each of these character types. Let's go. Arba midot b'yoshvei lefnei chachamim, sfog u'mashpech mishameret v'nafa. So says Rabbeinu Yonah, Sifog hu kli sheshoteh ubolea kol hamashkeh v'hamayim. A sifog is something that absorbs, it drinks all of the liquids and water, bein stlulim, bein achurim, whether those liquids are clean or they're dirtied. It absorbs all the information. Mashpech, what is mashpech? Hu kli, it's a funnel. Hu kli shebo notnin hayayin v'shofech al hakilim shepiv natun aleihen. You pour liquid through this mashpech into a vessel that has a thinner lip. That's the idea, or a thinner entrance. Kiminhag mochrei yenot, like people who sell wine. Mishameret, what is the wine sifter? Hu kli she'al pi hachavit b'sh'ah shemachnisim sham hayayin tchila. It's the vessel they put at the entrance of the barrel when they pour the wine inside. And nafa, the wine, the flour sieve, sheba minifin akemach v'asolet, that they sift the kemach and the solet, the flour and the fine flour, or the thin flour and the thicker flour between them. Umasheret hakemach shehidaka derech nikavim shein dakin. The thinner flour goes out of the bottom. V'koletet et hasolet lefi shehigasa, and the solet, which is the thicker flour, remains on top. She'ena yecholeh la'avor derech nikvei hanafa, because it can't go through the holes. Now let's explain. V'kulam lemashal ala talmidim. Each of these four instruments really are a parable regarding abilities or inabilities of students. Very interesting. Sfog, now sponge. When originally we said sponge, everybody said it sounds great. But as we just said, it's not so great. Because what's a sponge? Hu sofeg et hakol, it absorbs everything. Kacha talmid shehu mikabel kol hasfarot ve'eno mavchin bein anchonot l'she'enan nechonot. Some students, they'll absorb all the information and they don't have the ability to distinguish, to make a difference between the logic that is accurate and the logic that's not accurate, the right logic and the incorrect logic. So they just absorb all the information. They don't have the ability to classify, categorize. So that's not filter, exactly. They don't have that filter. So that's not necessarily such a good thing. Meaning, it's true, they retain information, which is a great thing, but at the same time, it's unfiltered information. Mashpech, what is the character of this funnel? Machnis bazeh motzi bazeh. It goes in and it goes out. Kacha mekabel kol ma sheshomea. He absorbs everything that he hears. Elish eino kolet davar echad. But he does not retain even one thing. You have some people, they're very smart. They're sharp. So they can catch everything, right away even.
But not this thing.
But they don't keep anything. They don't keep any information. Like a funnel. Now that's not a good thing, obviously, because even if you're very smart, so you can catch everything quickly, you can.
But you don't
keep anything. That's a negative trait. Mishameret. Now the third one we said was this wine sifter. Shehi motzi'a et hayayin v'koletet et hashmarim. The wine goes out of it and it keeps the sediment, it keeps the psolet, the garbage, like you said. This is someone, he absorbs the information, he forgets the appropriate, important things. He only retains the information that's not important. Right? About this character, Shlomo HaMelech says in Mishlei, it says, Alav Shalom, Lefi Sichlo Yehulal Ish. It's a pasuk in Mishlei. He says, according to one's sechel, his intellect, a person is praised. V'na'aveh lev, and a twisted heart, yihiyeh lavuz, is disgraced or scorned. Rotzeh lomar, what does it mean? She'ein la'adam levazot et chavero mipnei sheyada pachot mimenu. You should not make fun of someone who knows less than you. He has a little less sechel, you have a little more sechel, so don't make fun of him. That's the idea. Praise the person according to his intellect. If he's not as smart as you, it's okay. But a twisted heart, what does that mean? He doesn't keep any of the good information. He only keeps the incorrect information or the negative information. Yelavuz, that's actually a disgraceful thing. That's totally unfortunate. You could disgrace him. That's like a student compared to the wine sifter. So you sometimes have students, this third category, where they're listening, but they're only absorbing the wrong thing. Perhaps
stories, but not
the real ikar. Perhaps they're not trained to be able to absorb properly. They need to be trained. But the problem is they walk away with...
You absorb whatever you want to absorb.
Like what you want to absorb.
You make a story, you hear about the story, not the car.
And I'll tell you another example when I feel this sometimes, which is you sometimes have, in the middle of a class, somebody will start asking questions completely like off topic, completely unrelated. It's a little bit like mishameret, meaning you're not focused on what's ikar over here. You're a little bit, not that it's necessarily such a bad thing, but that's mishameret. It's off topic. It's the wrong information.
It's in the script.
It's exactly.
It's part of the deal.
Exactly. Stay on task. But now we get to nafa. Nafa is this flour sieve. The flour goes through, the very thin flour passes through, and the thicker flour remains on top. Now, I would have naturally said, you want the thin flour and not the thick flour, and that's the same as the wine sifter. But Rabbeinu Yonah explains differently, so let's see. Nafa, what is this flour sieve? It allows the thin flour to pass through, and it keeps the thicker flour. The thin flour is not as important because it's so thin, it's almost like it gets stuck to your hands. It's so insignificant you can't really use it for baking like you should. The thicker flour, we're not talking about very thick, but a little bit thicker is more chashuv. And actually, in the Beit HaMikdash, flour offerings came from that solet, from the thicker flour, not from that extremely thin flour. So a student who accepts and keeps the svara, the logic that is accurate, and he does not absorb the wrong svarot. Means if he hears something that's wrong, he lets it pass through. He doesn't absorb it. Something that's not true or not accurate doesn't go into his heart. And even if he knows it, he forgets it. So that's the mashal of a nafa. And that's the highest level, obviously. Somebody that has the ability, he hears the information, he absorbs the information that's nechona, that's accurate, and he pushes away the information that is wrong. Now, sometimes this requires training. You have to have some sort of a formal training to be able to distinguish between them. But that's how Rabbeinu Yonah explains these 4 character traits. It's also sometimes difficult when you're studying, especially study Gemara. There's so many details coming at you at one time, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's easy to get off topic or to get lost and not focus in on what's the ikar. So the Chachamim teach us, how do we focus on the ikar? That's the different students we have here. You want to say, Yosef?
To me, it looks like it's not the wrong information or better information. It's not important information. Like you wanted to explain something. So for me to understand, you give me an example.
Right.
So some people would hear the example,
focus
but
on
don't get the ikar.
I hear.
That's the...
I can't connect it back to the main point.
Yeah, they just take the example and they think about the example.
Very good.
But they don't think about what you give the example for.
Beautiful. Zach. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll pick up tomorrow with Ted Zayin. Zat Hashem.